There was no date, no warning. The shift happened quietly, behind the scenes. Maybe it was the moment you shared a dream, and someone laughed, or when someone told you to be more practical, stronger, normal. You swallowed the frustration and began to adapt. At first it was subtle. You just started speaking a little less than you truly thought. Then came the fake enthusiasm, the forced yes, agreeing with ideas that didn't belong to you, all to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be accepted. And what began as a social adjustment turned into a prison. Now you're a name on a badge, a photo on a profile, a resume that says nothing about what you feel. You've learned how to function, but forgotten how to live. And the scariest part? It all feels normal. You leave the house, check the boxes, smile when you should, say good morning in the right tone. You do everything expected from a functioning adult. But inside, something's off. A quiet discomfort, a vague sense of absence that you can't name. You've tried everything, new job, new city, new people, but the emptiness stays, because no matter where you go with you. The problem isn't the world, it's the character you created to survive in it. Carl Jung called this the persona, an identity built to protect you. But that, over time, took your place. It's like the version of you that faces the world became your warden. You take pride in your self-control, but lost connection to your truth. You present stability, but can't remember the last time you felt genuine joy from something simple. You're numb. From the outside, you look fine, but you know, when the noise stops, when the lights go out, when you're alone in front of the mirror, you know something inside you is buried alive, and no matter how hard you try, you can't shut out the whisper, this life isn't mine. And it's not, because you didn't choose all this. You just adapted. You fit in with what the world told you was right. School told you, family told you, religion whispered it, culture screamed it, and you complied. Not out of weakness, but out of the very real need for safety. Because when you're a child, being accepted feels more important than being real. But now, you're no longer that child, and the mask that once shielded you has become a chain. You live afraid of disappointing, of being rejected, of being forgotten. But what's happening is even worse. You're forgetting yourself. Jung said, "The loss of the true self is one of the deepest forms of human suffering." And that's what you're mourning. Not a person, not a goal, but you. You miss the version of yourself that never got the chance to exist. That's why so many collapse. Not because life is unbearable, but because life is hollow. You might be surrounded by people, busy, accomplished. But if inside there's only echo, it's because somewhere along the way you abandoned your real self between be polite and don't make a scene. And now the question is, how long will you keep playing a role and calling it life? The job isn't the problem. The relationship isn't the problem. The routine isn't the problem. The problem is, you're trying to live a life that your soul didn't write, and no soul can survive that for long. You were trained to be this way. From early on, they told you what was acceptable to feel, what was acceptable to say, what was safe to show. Being too spontaneous, inappropriate, speaking too loud, uncivilized, crying, weakness, dreaming too big, arrogance. So you began to shrink. You learned to cut parts of yourself just to fit into other people's expectations. And what didn't fit, you buried. So deep, you forgot where you put it. But it's still there. It lives in awkward silences, in impulsive reactions that don't make sense, in urges you repress, in anger that shows up out of nowhere and vanishes just as fast. That's called psychic conditioning. You were conditioned to abandon yourself, to build a persona, a social mask, a polished character, not because it was better, but because it was easier to digest. The tragedy is, you believed the role. You became the mask you once built just to survive. And that survival tactic comes at a cost, because the persona doesn't feel. It performs. It doesn't love. It pleases. It doesn't confront. It calculates. It doesn't live. It presents. And while the persona functions, your real self rots in the basement of your psyche. Carl Jung once warned, The greatest danger is when a person believes their persona is the whole of who they are. You look at your life now, and everything seems fine. But deep down, you know something's wrong. Your laughter is automatic. Your job is automatic. Your relationships feel scripted. You're productive, but not whole. You're like a well-lit store window, with nothing left inside. And keeping up that display, it's exhausting. Because to keep it alive, you have to lie. Not loudly, but emotionally. You lie when you say you're fine. You lie when you pretend to love what you do. You lie even in solitude, convincing yourself that this is enough, all to maintain an image, a name, a title, an identity the world celebrates. But your soul no longer recognizes, because the price of acceptance was truth. You had to amputate entire parts of yourself just to feel included. And now that you're included, you feel excluded from your own being. That's the invisible wound of the persona. It shields you from rejection, but exiles you from yourself. It saves you from judgment, but sentences you to internal disconnection. And the deeper that disconnection grows, the more you crave outside validation. You begin living through the social mirror, your worth measured in likes, in your boss's opinion, in the shallow affection of people who don't know your abyss. You become what Jung called a functional shell. You reply to emails, show up on time, smile during meetings. But inside, you're imploding. And the worst part, no one sees it. Because you've mastered the art of silent suffering. You know how to have existential breakdowns, with perfect posture. You know how to panic, politely. You're living proof that you can be completely shattered, and still be praised for your composure. But your soul knows, and it's keeping score. Through the hollowness, the exhaustion that never ends, the insomnia, the nameless anxiety, through that aching sense that something vital is missing, even if you can't name it. Now maybe you're beginning to see. The disconnection you feel isn't with the world, it's with you. You stopped listening, stopped seeing, stopped feeling. You're alive, but absent. And as long as you pretend that the persona is enough, you'll keep repeating the loop, changing scenery, swapping roles, but never rewriting the story. Because the problem was never the stage, it was the script, and the role you accepted without asking yourself if it was ever really yours. The shadow is what you hide. And the most tragic part? No one ever taught you how to deal with your shadow, only how to fear it. So you buried it, not with a shovel, but with silence, with guilt, with shame. From a young age, you were told certain emotions were wrong to feel. Anger was dangerous, ambition was selfish, desire was dirty, vulnerability was weakness. So what did you do? You locked it all away. You tucked away every impulse, every intense emotion, every truth that didn't fit. You buried your scream, swallowed your fury, masked your frustration. You cut off pieces of yourself to fit into the mold. But here's the truth. The shadow doesn't die when it's buried. It mutates. And then, it returns. It returns as resentment, as anxiety, as exhaustion, as misplaced rage, as fear of living. It shows up in your breakdowns, your silent envy, your irrational reactions that you don't understand, but can't stop. The shadow always returns. Carl Jung once said, "What you do not bring to consciousness will appear in your life as fate." You think you're in control, but it's the shadow pulling the strings. It's the voice that tells you to back away when something good comes close. It's the hand that sabotages your relationships, that pushes away opportunity, that whispers beliefs like, "I don't deserve this. I'll never make it. No one really cares." The shadow works in darkness, but it leaves fingerprints everywhere. It clouds your perception. It makes you suspicious of those who love you. It turns you against those who try to understand you. It makes you run from anything that demands presence. And when it grows strong enough, you start to see yourself. In everything you claim to hate, you criticize the arrogant, but deep down, you envy their boldness. You mock the confident. But it's really your own buried light that stings. You project your shadow onto others because it's easier to judge out there than to face the truth in here. But the more you deny it, the more power it gains. Because the shadow you ignore doesn't disappear. It adapts. it invades. It takes control of your story, and you don't even realize. How many times have you felt out of place in spaces where you should belong? How many times have you overreacted to something small and then wondered why? How many times have you repeated behaviors you swore you'd never repeat? Those aren't character flaws, they're echoes of the shadow. Cries from exiled parts of yourself, real parts, wounded parts, told long ago that they didn't deserve to exist, and you believed it. But now, they want their place back, and they come for it in the worst ways, in the late-night spiral, in the conversation that turns into chaos, in the relationship that quietly breaks, in the collapse no one sees, but you feel every day. Here's the truth. You're not broken for having a shadow. You're human. The issue isn't having a shadow, it's pretending you don't. To deny it is to let it rule you from the dark. To face it is to begin reclaiming your real identity. But don't get it twisted. Integrating the shadow isn't about unleashing your pain on others. It's not an excuse for recklessness. It's not about justifying every impulse because it's part of you. Integration is recognition. It's sitting with what's uncomfortable, without the mask. It's saying, this is part of me, and now that I see it, I can transform it. Because in the shadow lies not only your wounds, but also the strength you forgot you had, the courage you never used, the creativity you abandoned, the truth you've been silencing. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the emptiness still lingers. You spent too long trying to be all light, and forgot. It's in the contrast that your whole self is finally found. The nervousness, the tension in your chest when someone looks too closely, the urge to vanish when things get real. You thought it was just shyness or tiredness, maybe something from childhood that time would heal. But time passed, and it never left. In fact, it only got quieter, more subtle, more rehearsed. You learned to smile with a locked jaw, to accept compliments with a lump in your throat, to appear functional, while something inside you begged for a kind of rest you don't even know how to name. Then you started comparing. You looked around, at people who seemed confident, social, efficient, and you thought, maybe I'm broken. But you're not broken. You're disconnected. That thing you feel has a name. It's the shadow, and most of it was never yours to begin with. It was shoved into you. A teacher's comment, a father who wasn't there, a mother who pushed too hard without ever holding you. That one time you showed something you were proud of, and someone laughed, or when you cried, and someone said, stop that, be strong. So you stopped, and you swallowed. But what we repress doesn't disappear. It becomes a hole, a hollow space. That starts to make your choices for you. You dodge certain conversations, pull away from anyone who asks too much, sabotage yourself every time growth knocks on the door, get annoyed by people who have exactly what you never dared to pursue. You're not bad, you're not weak, you're scattered. That shadow, the part of you you've rejected for years, only wants one thing, to be seen. Not worshipped, not controlled, just seen. But you were taught that facing it is dangerous, like opening a door you're not sure how to close. And it is. But you know what's worse? Pretending the hole isn't there. Because the more you ignore it, the more power it gains. And you start calling it just who I am. You start mistaking protection for personality. Carl Jung said, what you don't face within will come back as fate. Maybe that's why things keep repeating. The same patterns, the same emptiness, the same failures, just with different names. You don't need to make peace with your shadow today. You don't need to fully understand it. But you need to stop running, because every time you turn away from it, you turn away from yourself. And every time you look elsewhere, you miss the one thing that could actually save you. Finally seeing who you really are. You've already realized that the sabotage, the outbursts, the impulses, they don't come from outside, they're yours. But now comes the most dangerous part of the journey, the moment you start confusing the shadow with your identity. The moment when instead of confronting it, you start wearing it like a badge. It's when the guy who gets angry says, that's just how I am. The one who keeps sabotaging himself says, I've always been like this. The one who lashes out says, I was just being honest. That's where many lose themselves. Because after seeing their own darkness, they don't know what to do with it, so they embrace it. Embrace the bitterness, embrace the self-destruction, embrace the chaos, and say to themselves, "At least now I'm being real." But Jung never said the shadow was a place to settle down. He said it's a place to enter, to retrieve what you left behind, not to drown in it. You weren't made to live like an animal that simply reacts. You are human. You have reason, conscience, choice. The shadow only becomes your ally when it follows your lead. If it starts leading you, you will ruin everything you care about. You'll push away those who love you. Repeat the same patterns. Call it authenticity while bleeding inside. It's easy to blame your past, easy to blame how you were raised, the lack of affection, the pressure, the trauma, school, parents, society. But tell me, when does the story change? When do you stop repeating the same script and finally step into the role of the adult who saves the wounded child still living in you? That pain you carry? It's real. But feeding it endlessly is a choice, and every choice has a cost. If you don't stop, that pain will collect interest. It'll isolate you, drain your will, turn you into a bitter man who watches life go by and mistakes that numbness for maturity. But now you know. You know this isn't the end. You know there's another way, harder, but real. The path where you take that shadow and turn it into a brick, not a burden. Turn pain into structure, turn chaos into boundaries, turn shame into power. It's not about denying who you were, it's about using it all to build who you're becoming. And no, it won't be easy. It'll hurt, it'll wear you down. You'll want to retreat back into the cave where you've been hiding for years. But every time you choose what's hard over what's easy, every time you pause the impulse and act with clarity, every time you look your shadow in the eye and say, "I see you, but I'm bigger," you become less a prisoner and more a leader of yourself. Because power isn't about accepting every feeling as truth. It's about commanding what you feel, with purpose. And now that you've come this far, there's only one question left. Are you going to keep blaming your shadow for the life you haven't built? Or will you use it as the foundation of the life you actually deserve? The choice is yours. No one else can make it for you. You thought they were the critics, the comparisons, the rejection, the trauma, the system. But deep down, you've always known. The real enemy was never out there. It was always you, not your whole self, but the part you buried, the part you pretended didn't exist, even as it quietly ran everything. Your shadow, that hidden corner of your mind you tried to silence, but it silenced you. You tried to hide it, but it exposed you. You tried to control it, but it controlled you. And now that the truth is on the table, now that you've seen it for what it is, named it, felt it, understood where it came from, the real question is, what are you going to do with it? Because knowing changes nothing. You already know plenty, but still act like you don't. Still accept less than you deserve. Still hurt the people who try to love you. Still hide behind clever excuses. And time doesn't wait for your awakening. The shadow won't pause while you catch up. It keeps feeding, it keeps growing. It becomes your personality, your way, your identity. And one day, you won't recognize yourself. Worse, you'll believe you were always this way. But what if I told you, it's not too late? You don't have to become the product of the broken things inside you. You can use it, all of it. That rage that wrecks your relationships, it can become courage. That insecurity that silences you, it can sharpen your awareness. That bitterness that isolates you from life, it can become wisdom. But only if you stop running. Because running from your shadow is running from yourself. And no one who's running from themselves can build anything that lasts. The good news? You made it here. And if you made it here, you're not the same person you were when this began. You've seen what you needed to see. Now comes the hard part. Acting like someone who saw. That doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean silencing the chaos. It means carrying it with awareness, with discipline, with purpose. Your shadow won't vanish, but it can be reclaimed, tamed, redirected. And when that happens, you'll see something brutal. Your enemy was never your shadow. It was the silence you kept around it. Now it has a name, it has shape, it has a history, And now you have a choice. You can keep feeding the broken character you were conditioned to play, or you can become the architect of the man they never imagined you could be. The choice? No one sees it happen, but the result will echo for the rest of your life.